She had flown this route many times before. Same sky, same long stretch of clouds, same quiet hours where the autopilot did most of the work and her mind stayed calm. To the passengers, she was just another commercial pilot doing her job. Number one knew much about her, and that was how she liked it. She kept her voice steady, her words short, and her life private. The cabin crew trusted her because she was always prepared. The airline trusted her because she never made mistakes. On this flight, there were 179 people on board. Families returning home, business travelers staring at screens, a few nervous. Flyers gripping their armrests. The weather report looked fine when they took off. Light turbulence, nothing serious. The first hour passed quietly. The engines hummed in their usual rhythm. A sound pilots learned to feel more than hear. Then, without warning, a sharp alert cut through the cockpit. A warning light flashed. Then another. She leaned forward, eyes scanning the panel, hands already moving before panic could reach her chest. One engine showed unstable readings. Not a full failure, but not normal either. She informed the co-pilot in a calm voice, the kind that keeps fear from spreading. They ran the checklist. Step by step. Everything by the book, but the plane did not respond the way it should have. The vibration grew stronger. Not violent, but wrong. She had felt this before, long ago, in a very different kind of aircraft. Back then, the stakes were different. Back then, mistakes were not forgiven. She pushed those thoughts aside. This was a passenger flight. Civilian. Rules. Civilian lives. She spoke to air traffic control, reporting the issue clearly, without drama. The controller's voice tightened when he heard the details. The nearest suitable airport was far, and weather was slowly changing. Clouds ahead were thicker than expected. Inside the cabin, passengers felt the plane dip slightly. A few heads turned. Seatbelts clicked tighter. The cabin crew moved calmly, trained to hide worry even when they feel it. In the cockpit, a second. Alert sounded. A system connected to flight control began acting strangely. Not failing but lagging. Slow response. Dangerous at cruising altitude. Her co-pilot looked at her, searching her face for answers. She did not raise her voice. She did not rush, but inside her mind, something shifted. A part of her that had been quiet for years woke up. She took manual control. The aircraft fought back slightly, like a heavy animal that didn't want to obey. She adjusted her grip, feeling the pressure through the controls. Every movement was small, precise. She compensated for the lag, predicting how the plane would react before it actually did. Air traffic control asked if assistance was needed. She paused for half a second, then answered honestly. Yes, that single word changed everything. Because of the altitude, location, and system behavior, the situation triggered a higher level alert. Not public, not announced to passengers. But somewhere far away, on a radar screen, the flight was now marked as something more than routine. The weather ahead worsened. Turbulence hit harder. The plane shook, and this time passengers felt it clearly. A child cried. Someone prayed quietly. The cabin crew made announcements, their voices calm but serious. She kept flying. Her breathing stayed slow. Her mind stayed clear. She adjusted thrust, angle, speed, all while managing a system that did not fully trust itself anymore. This was not something most commercial pilots train for deeply. This was edge-of-the-envelope flying. She did not tell anyone why. She knew how to do this. Minutes passed like hours. Fuel calculations ran through her head. Distance, weight, wind. Then a new voice entered the radio channel. Confident, military. They asked for confirmation of the flight number and situation. Air traffic control stepped aside. She answered. Without hesitation. There was a brief silence. Then the voice returned. Different now, respectful, almost careful. They asked her a question that had nothing to do with the aircraft. Question about her past. She did not answer right away. The co-pilot looked at her confused. This was not normal procedure. Outside, far in the distance, two shapes appeared on radar. Fast, controlled, closing in. F-22s. Passengers did not know this yet. They only felt the plane steady slightly, as if guided by an invisible hand. The turbulence eased just enough to breathe. She finally spoke into the radio, her voice still calm. "Yes," she said. "I know what I'm doing." That was all she said. Inside the cockpit, the moment hung heavy. Whatever she had been before, whatever she had done, it was no longer hidden. Not from the people guiding her now. Not from the aircraft trusting her hands, and not from the 179 lives behind her, depending on every quiet decision she made as the sky ahead grew darker. The moment the fighter jets came closer, the cockpit felt different. Not louder, not faster, but heavier. Responsibility pressed down in a way only someone who had carried lives before could understand. The co-pilot kept glancing at her, trying to read what she wasn't saying. He had flown with many captains, but none like this. None who stayed this calm when the sky itself felt uncertain. The F-22s did not announce themselves to the passengers. They stayed just out of sight, matching speed, watching every move of the struggling aircraft. On the radio, the military controller spoke again, giving short, clear instructions. Not orders, guidance. The kind given only when trust already exists. She adjusted course slightly. The plane responded late, but it responded. That was enough. Inside the cabin, the crew noticed something unusual. The plane felt steadier than before, even though turbulence still surrounded them. One attendant looked out a side window and thought she saw a sharp gray shape flash past the clouds. She blinked and told herself it was stress playing tricks. In the cockpit, the co-pilot finally spoke. "How do you know how to handle this kind of delay?" he asked quietly. She did not look at him. Her eyes stayed forward. "Because some planes don't forgive slow thinking," she replied. That was all. Another warning appeared, then stabilized. The aircraft was holding, but it was tired. Every system was working harder than it should. She knew this feeling well. Machines, like people, showed signs before they gave up. "You had to listen." The military controller asked her to confirm manual authority. She did. No hesitation. That single confirmation unlocked procedures meant for pilots who had trained beyond civilian limits. The airspace ahead began to clear without explanation. Other flights were quietly rerouted. To the world, it was just routine. Traffic management. To her, it felt familiar. Her hands moved with confidence, built long ago. She adjusted trim in a way most commercial pilots never practiced at altitude. She used wind instead of fighting it. She let the aircraft ride the air, not push against it. The co-pilot watched, learning in silence. Minutes later, one of the F-22 pilots spoke directly to her. He used a phrase that had not been spoken to her in years. A phrase from another life. Her jaw tightened for a moment, then relaxed. "Yes," she answered. "It's been a while." That was enough confirmation for them. In the cabin, the captain's voice came over the speakers. Calm, steady, honest. She told the passengers there was a technical issue, that they were not in danger, and that safety teams were assisting. Number. Drama, no fear. Just truth, carefully measured. People listened. Some relaxed. Some still prayed. But panic did not spread. The weather ahead began to thin. A narrow corridor opened between storm systems, guided by radar and fighter escort. The F-22s adjusted position, one slightly ahead, one off to the side. Silent guardians. She followed. The plane shuddered once, hard enough to feel in the chest. A gasp moved through the cabin. The co-pilot reached instinctively for the controls, then stopped. He trusted her now completely. She corrected instantly. Not by force, but by anticipation. "This aircraft wants to yaw left," she said calmly. "Don't fight it. Balance it." He nodded, absorbing every word. Fuel levels were tight but manageable. Distance to the alternate airport shortened. Runway length confirmed. Emergency crews were already moving, though passengers would not know. Until later. Then came the hardest moment. One engine stabilized fully. The other did not. A choice had to be made. Most pilots would reduce risk by following standard procedure. She did not ignore those rules, but she understood when rules had edges. She chose a path that kept the plane controllable, even if it meant accepting controlled damage over sudden loss. She informed the controllers. The military voice approved instantly. The co-pilot exhaled slowly. He realized something then. She wasn't just trained. She had been tested before, in skies where failure meant more than paperwork. The runway came into range on the display. Passengers began to sense the descent. The angle felt different, not wrong, just deliberate. Cabin crew took positions. Faces grew serious. Outside, the F-22s peeled away one by one, their job almost done. But before leaving, one pilot spoke one last time. "Good to have you back," he said. She did not reply. She didn't need to. Her focus narrowed to one thing only: landing 179 people safely. The wheels were not down yet. The plane was not safe yet. And the hardest seconds were still ahead. The descent began with an unusual silence. Not the calm kind, but the kind that makes every small sound feel louder than it should. The cockpit lights were dimmed, the clouds below broken and uneven, like torn fabric. She leaned slightly forward, as if that alone could help her feel the aircraft better. At this altitude, mistakes had no time to be corrected. The co-pilot read out numbers in a steady voice. Airspeed, angle, rate of descent. Each word mattered. She acknowledged them without looking away, her eyes fixed on the instruments and the thin line of the horizon that kept shifting through the clouds. The aircraft shuddered again, this time longer, not violent, but heavy. Like the plane was tired of holding itself together. She adjusted power slowly. Too fast, and the imbalance would grow. Too slow, and they would lose lift. This was the narrow space between falling and flying. She had trained for it once, long ago, in jets that had no room for fear. A warning tone sounded short, sharp. The co-pilot stiffened. She did not. "That's noise, not danger," she said. "Watch the trend, not the sound." He swallowed and nodded. Below them, emergency vehicles lined the runway. Their lights cut through the fog in long red and white streaks. Passengers could not see them yet, but she could. The airport had cleared everything for them. No other traffic. No distractions. In the cabin, people held hands. Some stared straight ahead. Some closed their eyes. A few recorded messages on their phones just in case. The cabin crew moved down the aisle, offering quiet words, grounding touches, calm smiles. That took effort to hold. Back in the cockpit, the landing gear lever waited. She delayed it. The co-pilot noticed. "Gear?" he asked carefully. "Not yet," she replied. "Let the plane settle first." She felt the air change. The turbulence eased slightly, replaced by a smooth but unstable flow. This was the moment. She lowered the gear. The sound echoed through the aircraft. A deep mechanical thud, followed by the familiar hum. 3 green lights came on. Lock. She exhaled slowly for the first time in minutes. But relief did not last. The right engine surged unexpectedly, then dipped. The aircraft yawed. The horizon tilted sharply for a split second. Gasps filled the cabin as gravity shifted. Her hands moved before thought. Rudder, trim, throttle, all together, in one smooth motion. The plane corrected, just barely, but enough. "Good catch," the co-pilot whispered. She did not answer. Her mind went somewhere else now. Not to the past, not to memories, but to patterns. Air, weight, motion. The aircraft was no longer a machine. It was a problem to be solved second by second. Air traffic control cleared them to land. Wind information came through. Crosswind. Stronger than expected. She adjusted approach angle. Slightly steeper. Less time exposed. At 500 feet, the plane felt wrong again. Not broken, uncertain. Like it didn't trust the ground. She spoke into the cabin one last time. Her voice was calm but firm. We are landing now. Please remain seated and follow crew instructions. That was all she said. Passengers braced. At 200 feet. The runway lights filled the windshield. Bright. Close. Real. The crosswind. Pushed hard. Most pilots would correct late. She corrected early. She aligned the nose, then let the plane drift. Slightly sideways, using the wind instead of fighting it. The co-pilot watched, amazed. This was not textbook commercial flying. This was something else. Something older, sharper. The wheels touched down hard, but straight. A violent jolt ran through the cabin. Bags fell. People cried out. She held the nose steady. Let the aircraft roll. Let it bleed speed naturally before braking too hard. The second engine protested but stayed alive. Then finally, the plane slowed. Reverse thrust engaged. Brakes held. And then they stopped for half a second. Nothing happened. Then the cabin exploded with sound, crying, shouting, prayers spoken out loud. People hugged strangers. Some laughed through tears. In the cockpit, she sat very still. Her hands trembled slightly. Now that it was over, the co-pilot looked at her with something close to awe. You saved them, he said quietly. She looked out at the runway, at the emergency crews rushing toward them, at the safe ground beneath the wheels. We all did, she replied, but deep down, she knew the truth. And so did the voices on the radio, already speaking. Her old call sign again, softly, like a name that never truly faded. Asterisk. The moment the engines shut down, a strange calm filled the aircraft. Not relief yet, something deeper. The kind that comes only after danger has passed but the body has not caught up. The plane sat on the runway, surrounded by flashing lights, but inside time felt paused. She removed her headset slowly. Her hands were steady again. Years of training had taught her how to switch off emotions when the job was done. The co-pilot, however, was still breathing fast. He stared at the instruments as if they might suddenly come back to life. In the cabin, applause rose in waves. It was not loud at first. Just a few claps, then more, until the entire aircraft echoed with gratitude. Some passengers stood, despite instructions, just to look toward the cockpit door. They did not know her name. They did not know her past. They only knew they were alive. Cabin crew coordinated the evacuation plan. But there was no fire, no smoke, no immediate threat. Emergency teams confirmed it was safe to disembark normally. One crisis had ended, but another was about to begin. Outside, officials waited. Airline management, safety investigators, and beyond them, people who did not wear airline badges at all. She noticed them through the cockpit window. Military posture never really hides. The co-pilot followed her gaze and said nothing. When the door finally opened, a wave of sound and emotion rushed in. Passengers thanked the crew, some with words, some with tears. One elderly man stopped in front of her seat and placed his hand over his heart before moving on. A mother held her child close and whispered something she would remember forever. She nodded politely. She did not smile much. She never did after flights like this. Once the last passenger left, the mood changed again. Quiet, serious, professional. An airline official entered first, asking if she was fit to speak. She answered yes. Her voice was normal. Always was. Then two others stepped in. They did not introduce themselves. They didn't need to. One of them addressed her by a name she no longer used. Not her legal name, not her airline name. The one from before. The co-pilot's eyes widened. He looked between them, then at her, realizing the truth in pieces. You shouldn't use that name here, she said calmly. One of them nodded. Understood, but command needs confirmation. She stood straight, composed. Confirmed, she said. That was me. The silence that followed was heavy, respectful. Final. They did not ask how she did it. They already knew. The data would tell them everything. Control inputs, timing, decisions made outside civilian training limits. What they needed now was permission. News had not broken yet, but it would. Radar tracks, fighter escorts, cleared airspace. People would ask questions. They asked her one instead. Are you willing to let your past be acknowledged? She thought of the 179 faces behind her, of the way the aircraft had responded when nothing else should have worked, of the call signs spoken over the radio after so many years of silence. I didn't save them for attention, she said. I saved them because I could. They accepted that answer. As she walked down the stairs onto the tarmac, cameras were already appearing beyond the barriers. Flashing lights, raised voices, headlines forming before facts. She stopped halfway down and looked at the plane once more. It bore the marks of stress now, scorching, scratches, a tired machine that had done its best. So had she. Medical staff asked if she needed help. She declined. Investigators asked for statements. She agreed. Slowly, on her terms. Later, alone in a quiet room, she finally allowed herself to sit back. The uniform felt heavier than it had that morning. Not because of fear, but because it now carried two lives, one she lived openly, and one she thought she had left behind. Outside, someone said her call sign again. Louder this time. She closed her eyes briefly. She knew this was not the end of the story. It was only the moment the world started asking who she really was and why, when everything failed, the sky seemed to trust her anyway. The days that followed were quieter than anyone expected. No sudden announcements. No immediate return to uniforms or classified rooms. Just a pause, as if the world itself was deciding how to treat what had happened. News cycles moved on to other stories, but this one never fully disappeared. It stayed, resurfacing in discussions, interviews, and training rooms where pilots replayed the landing frame by frame. She went back to flying after clearance was given. Short routes at first, familiar aircraft, normal skies. Passengers boarded without knowing who sat behind the cockpit door, and she preferred it that way. The routine grounded her. Checklists, briefings, smooth climbs. Safe landings, but something had changed. Crew members listened more closely when she spoke. Younger pilots asked careful questions, not about fame, but about judgment. About how to know when a situation was truly dangerous and when fear was lying. She answered them honestly. Respect the aircraft, she would say, but never assume it will save you. One evening, after a routine landing, a training manager asked her to stay back. The request was polite, optional, but she understood the tone. In a quiet briefing room, they spoke about updating emergency response training, about bridging the gap between theory and reality, about what had worked on that flight and why. They wanted her insight, not her past. That mattered to her. Outside the airline, other conversations were happening. Defense analysts discussed the escort without using her name. Aviation authorities quietly revised protocols. Somewhere, future pilots would train differently because of one flight that refused to follow the rules of disaster. She did not attend those meetings. Instead, she focused on the present. One afternoon, she received a letter, not electronic, handwritten, from a passenger. The handwriting was uneven, the words simple. It thanked her for staying calm, for not sounding afraid, for making a child believe the sky was safe again. She folded the letter carefully and placed it In her flight bag that mattered more than headlines, weeks passed. Then one morning, as she prepared for duty, a familiar aircraft sat at the gate. Same model, same system layout. She paused for a moment longer than usual before boarding. Not fear. Recognition. During pre-flight checks, she noticed a subtle change. A new advisory. A software update. A direct result of what she had experienced. Quiet proof that someone had been listening. As the plane pushed back, the co-pilot asked her something unexpected. "Do you ever miss it?" he asked. "The other life?" She considered the question while watching the ground move away. "I don't miss the danger," she said. "I miss the clarity." He nodded, understanding without fully understanding. Mid-flight, she looked out at the clouds. Endless, peaceful, deceptive. Her phone, stored away, buzzed once during cruise. She did not check it until after landing. The same secure channel. Another message. Offer still stands. Training role. Limited exposure. She read it twice. This time she replied with one word. Details. The answer came quickly. As she walked through the terminal, unnoticed among travelers, she felt something settle inside her. Not excitement. Not fear. Purpose. She had learned long ago that some people are meant to walk away from the edge. Others are meant to stand there, so others never have to. The sky outside was clear. And for the first time since the emergency, she felt ready for whatever came next, knowing that saving 179 lives had not pulled her backward into the past. It had shown her exactly where she still belonged. Asterisk. The new role did not come with a uniform or a title anyone recognized. That was intentional. She arrived at the facility before sunrise, signing in under a civilian designation, walking past people who did not know why her presence mattered. The building was quiet, clean, and deliberately unremarkable. Inside, however, every room was designed for one purpose: preparing pilots for moments when theory fails. She was introduced simply as a consultant. No mention of call signs. No mention of past operations. Just experience. In the briefing room, young pilots sat straight-backed, confident, skilled, and untested. She recognized that look immediately. She had worn it once herself. They expected technical lessons, checklists, procedures. She gave them something else. She showed them data from the flight. Not to praise herself, but to show where time disappeared, where hesitation grew, where small delays became big dangers. Machines fail slowly, she said. People fail suddenly. Train for both. They listened. Over the following weeks, her presence changed how scenarios were built. Simulations became less forgiving. Weather systems behaved unpredictably. Systems failed in ways manuals did not fully explain. Pilots learned to think ahead. Instead of reacting late, some struggled, some adapted. Those were the ones she spent extra time with one evening. After a long session, a trainee asked her why she cared so much. She answered without hesitation. Because once, 179 people trusted. Someone they could not see, she said. And that trust deserves to be honored. Outside the facility, life continued quietly. The flight she saved became a case study. Her name appeared briefly in official reports, then faded again. She returned to commercial flying part-time, balancing both worlds with care. Passengers still did not know who she was. That was fine. One day, while boarding a routine flight, a child stopped near the cockpit and looked up at her. "My mom says you fly the plane," the child said. She smiled slightly. "That's right. Are you scared?" the child asked. She knelt to eye level. "Sometimes," she said. "But being scared means you care." The child nodded, satisfied, and walked away. As the aircraft climbed into clear skies, she felt the familiar calm settle in. Not the calm of avoidance, but the calm of readiness. The kind that comes from knowing you have faced the worst and stayed steady. Far away, two jets crossed the horizon. barely visible, heading somewhere else, toward another problem she might never know about. That was fine too. Her story did not end with exposure or applause. It ended with quiet influence, with lives protected by lessons passed on, with trust rebuilt in ways no headline could measure. She was once just a commercial pilot. She still was. But now, whenever the sky demanded more than ordinary skill, there were others ready, trained by someone who had stood in that moment and chosen not fame, not fear, but responsibility. And that, she knew, was the real legacy of saving 179 lives.